What's the dumbest thing you believed as a kid? When I was pretty young, probably about 5 years old, I met the Black Power Ranger and got a picture of him signed. In the picture you could see that he was missing his middle finger, and my mom told me it was because he had flipped his mom off, so she cut it off. I believed it until I was about 20 years old, when my mom told me she had lied about it and didn't actually know what happened. Growing up, I told so many people this guy's mom cut his finger off. Google says an undisclosed accident when he was 4. So unconfirmed his mom cut it off. Once I was playing with some toys and my mom was talking on the phone to her friend. I guess they were talking about kids growing up and having families someday, because my mom puts her hand over the phone and asked me if I wanted kids someday and if I wanted boys or girls. I gave it some thought and said that I wanted one boy and one girl. For the longest time after this, I thought that it had been completely decided. Like my mom was just on the phone with whoever you call to place an order for kids. And my order had been finalized. Order within 1 minute for delivery tomorrow. When I was a kid, my mom explained to me that we all had belly buttons because that's how our moms fed us before we were born. So I thought when you got pregnant, your belly button opened up and you just put whatever you wanted to down there. Like I thought women were just shoving chicken legs in their belly buttons. Plot twist, I'm a postpartum nurse now. Ha ha ha. I thought babies came out of feet. Because feet aren't down there. People don't like people that grow vegetables in their house. I secretly celebrated my mom's poor in-house gardening skills because her tomato plants never had any tomatoes. I was about 11 when I figured out what those tomato plants were. Oh, so you wouldn't tell people that actors, TV characters would have to come back into a studio for each rerun of a show, movie. I would always be so amazed that people would have the time to go into a room with a camera multiple times a day just so I could watch them do the same thing over and over again. I used to think that laugh tracks were somehow real life. Like I was hearing everyone else laughing who was watching the same show I was. In hindsight, this is really stupid. Obviously the sound is coming from the speakers. But growing up we only had TV at my grandma's place, and I remember laughing really loud when the laugh track came on so all her neighbors would think I got the joke too. I thought that drinking and driving meant any drink. I burst into tears the first time I heard about drinking and driving. My dad always had a Dr. Pepper when we went places, and I thought he was going to go to jail forever. The teachers sleep at school. The first time I saw one of my teachers at the supermarket, I was shocked. I must have thought the school kept them in a broom closet or something. My stepdad had an old truck with 2 gas tanks that he would flip a switch to change from one to the other. He had us convinced that he would magically steal gas from other vehicles. He would tell us to pick one and we would watch the gas dial go from E to F while driving on the highway. Blew my mind. You know those animatronic dinosaurs at museums? I knew they were robots. But as a child I was convinced that the robot was unaware of its animatronic status. I believed that if the robot wanted to, it could and would step over the barrier and eat me and everyone else. This fear was compounded when my dad, more than once, picked me up and pretended he would drop me down the other side of the barrier. My dad used to make stir-fry fairly often. With chicken. One night as I was eating it I asked what the meat was. Octopus. He replied. Seemed logical enough at the time. So I just accepted it and moved on with my life. From then on, whenever we had stir-fry, someone would inevitably ask, "How's your octopus?" And I would answer, "Fine." Or something similar. Fast forward. I'm 18. Home from college on break and we're having stir-fry. "How's your octopus?" "Fine." You guys are all a holes. Single quote. That SX was literally sleeping next to one another and making moaning sounds. I heard things I wanna forget. I thought SX was making out with your shirt off but not pants off because that would be gross, LMAO. Yeah, imagine taking your pants off in front of someone else. How gross. I thought a baby just randomly appeared in a woman's womb. I stayed awake crying about it because I didn't want to become pregnant. Same, oh my god. And at one point I somehow got the idea that stepping on grass was what made you pregnant, that there were little thorn things too small to notice in the grass. And they took years. But they traveled up to your belly and made a baby in there. But the years could depend. That's why people had babies at different ages. I was so scared that it would happen to me. That maybe I just stepped on a faulty thorn that only had like 5 years on it and I would get pregnant at 8. I had no idea where I got this idea from. Where on God's green earth could you have gotten an idea like that? Not me, but my brother was convinced for a few weeks that some cows had longer legs on one side of their body so they could stand on hills. Those are the ones we get lean beef from. I didn't know cars have a turn signal lever. So I thought the car knew where we were going. I thought the car would use the arrows to tell my parents where to turn. I thought the same thing. I wondered how the heck the car knew where we were going. My parents didn't tell the car where they wanted to go. I was confused. That dinosaurs were still alive on another island. And I kept asking my mother if we could go to the island with all the dinosaurs. Then she told me they were all dead. Clearly your mom never heard of Isla Nublar. I used to watch my dad go to the ATM. Look at the receipt and get grumpy, frustrated. I knew how bank accounts and ATMs worked. But the kid logic part of my brain figured that they also kind of worked like slot machines. In that, when you conducted some transaction on them, you got that slip with 3 icons on it. If you got one with 3 cherries, for example, you would take it inside and they would deposit $50 or whatever into your account. I figured he was frustrated because he kept losing all the time. I even asked him a few times when he was looking at the receipt. Did you win? And he was like, no. Single quote. For some reason, I thought every car that was made had to do a crash test. Probably because my dad once told that our car had a very good rating in the crash test. I was amazed by the fact that all cars were repaired so well before being sold. When I was young, my parents told me that if I kept leaving the fridge open then I would freeze the whole world and then no one would like me, sad face. My mom told me babies came from pumpkin patches. I thought that if you eat a pumpkin you'll become pregnant. Only if you eat the seeds. That all bald men were kidnappers. No idea where it came from. I really don't think I was kidnapped as a child. But if I was, it was definitely a bald man that did it. I thought men who were hairy all over were less evolved. My brother and I wrote letters to Santa and our dad would open up the coal furnace door and we would throw them in the fire. We believed they would go directly to the North Pole. My mom had us throw our letters in a wood fire. And when sparks came down and rested on the burning paper, those were the fire fairies and they carried the ashes to Santa where he magically reassembled them and read your letter. Relevant username. My dad also made me believe there were little gnomes working in ATM and vending machines. That we had to change our names during different stages of our lives. Like we have a toddler's name, a teenager's name and an adult's name. Timmy to Tim to Timothy. Bobby, greater than Rob, greater than Robert, greater than Bob. Escalator stairs were one-time use and just kinda piled up under the floor. That's so funny to me. Just all these stairs in a bin. Gotta take them out to the truck and dump them the stair disposal. When I was about 4, my older sister told me that since the population of Japan was so high, Japanese people slept sideways on their beds so they could fit more people on every bed. I believed it until I went to a sleepover at 13 and suggested that we sleep Japanese style on the bed so everyone could fit. This is too good. So many spoons. Blue fire was cold. Azula. 2 gems from my youth. 1. I used to think my testicles were the eggs of my future children. Like, one day they would hatch and I'd have 2 kids. 2. I thought safe sex meant someone left their clothes on. That fat people explode when they get too fat. That the gender of a baby depended on which person was trying harder during sex. My brother had me convinced for a while that each person had to have a unique favorite color. And since his was blue, I had to change mine. On my first day of kindergarten, we had to introduce ourselves and say our favorite color. I was super stressed out because the kids in front of me picked the good colors. And I kinda panicked and told everyone my favorite color was gray. I thought homosexuals were people who only had sex at home. I mean, you're not wrong. Have you seen gay people having sex outside? Yes. Go on. That dogs were boys and cats were girls. Anecdotally, I've noticed a lot of older people seem to think this. Most of the people of my parents' generation refer to all dogs they meet as good boy even after they're told it's a female. I thought that my stomach was actually the entire volume of my body. Eating food would pile it all up as if putting it into a bag. When I was asked why I would drink or eat smaller foods when I was full, my reasoning was, there are still cracks between all the other food I ate. So it can fall through those gaps. I live by some fairly large mountains. One day it was so overcast you couldn't see them. I asked my brother why we couldn't see them and he said construction workers cut them down. I was so sad. I was relieved to see them the next day. That every time you learned something new, you got a new wrinkle in your brain. That's not entirely inaccurate. Not a physical wrinkle, but a new neural connection.